I now invite Pat Hambrick to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in the affirmation of covenant, which is printed in your order of service.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in the affirmation of covenant, which you will find printed in your order of service, saying, Love is a doctrine of the church.
Quest of truth is a sacrament,
and service is a prayer.
to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. This hour completes the 75th day since the current president's second inauguration. I recently reread an essay by Tiago Forte reviewing Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Pleasure Activism. The essay is called Pleasure as an Organizing Principle. Forte's opening paragraphs describe the dominant patterns he sees in American culture. At this moment, his essay sounds like a diagnosis of the administration as it works toward what it sees as progress. I quote him at length so that you can see what I mean. The organizing principle of the modern world is pain. Avoiding it, yes, but also trading in it. Taking refuge in it, and using it to justify our actions. Pain has so many uses. Why would you ever give up such a versatile tool? We trade in pain when we use it to bargain for progress. We assume that the bigger the impact we want to have, the more dramatic the change, the more we have to suffer. Isn't that how it works? Isn't the depth of my sacrifice a measure of how much I care? But the pain of suffering can become its own metric and get optimized to the extreme, as all metrics eventually are. In the face of a stubborn world that doesn't yield to our efforts, it can be easier to use the pain we are enduring as a proxy. We take refuge in pain when we use it to hide from our problems. Pain is all-consuming, a powerful distraction from the things we don't want to face. Pain is self-annihilating, temporarily turning off the ego that accuses us of not doing enough, not being enough. Pain can be a refuge where the overwhelming complexity of modern life is reduced to a simple, pulsating throb. We use pain to justify ourselves when there are no other excuses. Can't you see I'm suffering? Can't you see I'm at my very limit? Pain passes the buck to some other cause, some other perpetrator. It is the flag we wave in the face of all our accusers, especially ourselves. As long as I am suffering, I am shielded from responsibility for the consequences of my actions. But I have to keep suffering to keep that shield in place. We're told that our lives are better than our ancestors along nearly every dimension imaginable. We are healthier, wealthier, happier, and living longer than any previous generation. But in a different way, The very technology that has made these advancements possible has also raised the visibility of pain in the world. Forte then quotes a black Zen teacher, Angel Kyodo Williams, who says, "Our access to the global scale of suffering has become immediate through technology, but we have not developed the capacity to be with that increased awareness of suffering." Forte says it has been globalized, just like everything else. We are awash with it. Like a permeating fog every minute, we are online, and we spend most of our waking hours online. Do you recognize a lot of our recent experience in that description? I think when the progress you're working for itself causes so much suffering, it might just be a good idea to reassess your goals. To Forte's last point, that we spend most of our waking hours online, the host of one of MSNBC's multiple hour-long newsapaloozas, Chris Hayes, has devoted a whole book called The Siren's Call, which I just finished reading. I don't watch any of those MSNBC news shows anymore, but I like his podcast called Why Is This Happening, where he interviews one thoughtful person for about an hour. I always learn something from it. In the book, he argues that our attention is precious. It creates what we remember, the material from which we make the stories of our lives. In a way, attention is our lives. We experience most fully what we pay attention to. And as Emerson said, what we are worshiping, we are becoming. And then Hayes analyzes at length how in various media, from his work world of cable TV news to all the varieties of commercial social media, marketers compete for our attention and indeed commodify it, because once they have our attention, they want to turn around and sell it to advertisers. Some of what he writes sounds like he's venting the stress of doing his cable news show, but most of it is thoughtful and philosophical. He was a philosophy major in college, and in the book, that training comes shining through. One part of the book that I keep thinking about is his analysis of attention. He identifies 3 kinds of attention: voluntary, involuntary, and social. Voluntary attention is what you think it is, when we focus on something intentionally. To do that, we actively exclude other things. We pay attention to this chosen thing and pay no attention to anything extraneous to it. You might remember those PSAs that were created to remind drivers to look out for bicyclists. They start with an announcement, "This is a test." Then they show you 2 teams, one wearing white, one wearing black. And they start to move around, each passing a basketball among their respective team members, and you're asked to count how many passes the white team makes. Have you seen those? If you've seen, so few people who've seen these. Yeah, so this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. After they tell you the number of passes so that you know if you got it right? Then they ask, "But did you see the gorilla? Or did you see the moonwalking bear?" And sure enough, when you're not focused on counting the passes, there it is. So that's our voluntary attention. We get real focused and shut out everything we're not focused on, even a moonwalking bear. Involuntary attention is when you're, say, in a restaurant and a waiter drops a stack of dishes that makes a loud crash, and now you're looking around to see what happened. Or it might be you hear an unfamiliar sound and start looking around to discover its source. In these cases, something you didn't choose has captured your attention. That's involuntary attention. And then social attention. That's when you hear someone call your name, or you thought you did, and you look around to see who called you. Or it's when the letter is addressed to you by name rather than, say, occupant. You're more likely to open the letter that calls your name. So these are three different things. One we choose, one that distracts us in a dramatic or compelling way, and a third that makes us respond to someone's real or perceived request for our attention. Hayes spends most of the book analyzing how marketers and algorithms and the like bid for our attention, and how their competition for it drives them to manipulate more and more of our involuntary and, with enough harvested data, our social attention, which are the easiest to grab. At the end, though, he offers some thoughts about how to reclaim our attention from the pressure of all that commodification and marketing of it. The one that has most stuck with me is where he draws an analogy between physical and online spaces. In physical spaces, we speak of home and workplaces, and then third spaces. A library, a coffee shop, a park, a church community, where we can have experiences that are primarily about being in community together. He lifts up a group chat app, any group chat app, as online analogs to such third spaces. You set it up yourself. There's no advertising and no algorithm trying to help you find friends or certain kind of content. The only content is what you put there. The only friends are the ones you decided to include. And if you want to include Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, you can. But if he's not a personal friend, he might view that with some skepticism. And the good news is the market for apps does offer such third spaces. So we can claim our space, even online. And we can claim there and lean into the values we deem best. In the introduction to her book, Pleasure Activism, that Forte had reviewed in that essay, Adrienne Maree Brown writes, "My intentions for readers of this book are that you recognize that pleasure is a measure of freedom. Notice what makes you feel good and what you're curious about. Learn ways you can increase the amount of feeling good time in your life to have abundant pleasure. Decrease any internal or projected shame or scarcity thinking around the pursuit of pleasure, quieting any voices of trauma that keep you from your full, sacred, sensual life. Create more room for joy, wholeness, and aliveness, and less room for oppression, repression, self-denial, and unnecessary suffering in your life. Identify strategies beyond denial or repression for navigating pleasure in relationship to others, and begin to understand the liberation possible when we collectively orient around pleasure and longing." And as a bonus, realize that you are a pleasure activist. Yes. Did you know that? I hear Adrienne Maree Brown is endorsing a healthy emotional balance in our lives so as to maintain ourselves in a condition to bring more good and more beauty and more truth and more justice into the world. She leans heavily into the theme of pleasure because our culture, sometimes overtly, sometimes subtly, leans heavily toward and markets to us the so-called virtues of pain. But pain isn't all there is, and shouldn't be sought or prioritized, especially not as any institution's policy. Rebecca Parker's words in today's reading express the balance. To think that joy triumphs over despair assumes that bad feelings need to be excised or suppressed by stronger, better feelings. Peace or happiness or even survival are imagined cutting something out or dominating some aspect of the self. Viewing the soul this way internalizes violence. I hear Brown giving the other side of that coin, that neither should we think that pain and bad feelings ought to triumph. Parker says from her experience, I did not defeat negative feelings of anguish and despair because I saw something more lovely and good. Rather, I became able to feel more. My feeling broadened. Pain, sadness, and despair were not eliminated or overcome. I embraced them with a larger heart. My consciousness broadened to embrace memories of religious community, immediate experiences of the world's beauty, and the kindness of human beings, and a vivid sense of future possibility. Both Brown and Parker elaborate for our time on that old rhyme by William Blake that, again, you probably know, even if you don't know who wrote it. Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. That is to say, we grieve because we love. Blake continued, it is right that it should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, safely through the world we go. I'm not sure I'd go so far as to say it is right that it should be so, but I think for the reasons Parker gives, it is well that it should be so. Feeling more and having more capacity to hold all the feels makes for a fuller life and a greater capacity to lean into love and fully live it. I don't think that knowing that makes us safe, and I doubt that Blake meant that. I think he meant that when we grow in these ways, we know better how to keep each other safe. And that's what these days call us to. Collective resistance and action to keep all of us safe. Let's keep up that good work and good trouble. So may it be. Amen.
I invite Pat back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join us in saying our closing words. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And may we lean in to love and joy.